We've got a really awesome session planned around the supply planning workbench and inventory allocation. I'm going to take this time to introduce Michael Sullivan. He used to work for NetSuite, now is working for BSP as a solution architect with Husssain Zaidi, and they're going to be talking today about supply planning workbench and inventory allocation.
So quick little intro. Absolutely correct. I was at NetSuite for 8 years, focusing on WDM manufacturing. Prior to that, I spent 16, 17 years at a couple of other ERP companies in North America and in Germany, actually. My topic here is going to be supply allocation. So it's not a brand new topic to NetSuite, but about 2 years ago, it got redone. And there have been incremental additions to it ongoing. Going all the way back to what Gavin was talking about, this is one of the major topics of investment. Let me explain kind of what I'm going to go through with you. But first of all, kind of high level, what is the difference of supply allocation based on what was there before? Before, there was a pretty basic commitment process. What this really does is augment, enhance that. Doesn't completely remove it, but it brings you a ton of functionality, especially if you're in distribution or manufacturing. What's important here is that it can be run, so the supply allocation engine can be run in an automated fashion. That means it's running really anytime there's an edit or a change to any record, it's automatically recalculating the reservation policies. You can also do a scheduled allocation process where you can define parameters, and there could be multiple scheduled allocations running during the day, or you can go in as a user at any point in time, filter, select records, and then run that. The major differences to before is the allocation against future inventory. So that was not possible before. So think of open purchase orders, work orders, transfer orders that are not physically built yet, but you want to reserve inventory against those. That's possible now. And the second thing is reserving against a sales channel. So conceptually, I'm going to kind of explain the concept. This is what I'm going to go through. I'll try to keep it pretty quick with the setup. Then I have a whole bunch of examples. I'll talk about sales channels, alerts, right? Being alerted automatically when something potentially is late, very important. And then a couple of features here around earliest time available, reallocation, and then I'll just show you a screen about the manual allocation. The way I typically explain this in presentations, especially with the ever-changing markets right now, think of the last 2 or 3 years, is people have expanded their sales channels, right? So somebody that might have just been a distributor before, maybe they're selling to big box stores, maybe through Shopify, maybe Amazon, or maybe to some other channels, marketplaces. So the question is always who gets inventory and how much inventory do they get of that, right? Because everyone's got a bottleneck right now getting products in. So the question is who gets it, who's most important, right? What transactions are coming in first? And this is really the whole concept about the supply allocation. Is just as an example of a sales order, as you enter that sales order, right, the system's looking at a supply required date, and it is looking for inventory, right? But it's also competing against existing orders that are already in the system. So think of it, all of those other customers that are already there, but who's more important? Who wants it first? Who got there first, right? Order priorities. Who's got the highest dollar value? Or who's going to generate the most gross profit? Or how can I fulfill the most orders at the same time? Now, if it doesn't find inventory, one of the options is to open it up to open transactions, right? Could be a ship on the water, could be an open PO, could be a production order, could be a transfer order. So think of all of this happening in milliseconds. And let me kind of go to the NetSuite screen and kind of explain that as quickly as possible here to make sure that I'm just hiding the floating window here one more time. So The basic setup is to define a strategy, and just think of the strategy being how you want to allocate. This is most relevant if you're doing the automated process, right? So if you're doing it manually, you basically are the person, but it allows you to utilize future inventory, right? It allows you to figure out, do you want to allocate, to something that's closest to the date that you need it or the earliest, right? Do you want the complete quantity or just what's available? And very important, do you want to reserve it, which could mean that you're going to lose that reservation at some point, or do you directly want to firm it? So the concept is per customer, per item, you can set up all of these different allocation strategies and then put them as a preference, but also have the ability to overwrite them. So the preference would state, here's some basic sorting, like as I do the automation process, do I have it happening automatically? So if you turn that off, that means you're in control. And then you decide for all of these different areas, for a sales order, a work order, transfer order, what is the default allocation strategy? And again, you can overwrite these manually, or the system will pull them in from a customer record as well. So if you have different sales channels, what you can do is create them and link those to sales orders so that when you're allocating inventory, you'll be able to utilize an order reservation, which I'll come to a little bit later. And again, these are just free-form fields. You'll decide yourself what your channels are. And then you'll create your reservations, and then the system will utilize those reservations to allocate only a certain amount of inventory so that potentially some of your big customers don't end up without inventory, right? Very important. So especially if you're doing this in the background, it's kind of magic happening. So I'm going to use the sales order as an example here. And you can already see there's an allocation alert. It's already telling me that there's something going wrong. So I'm going to scroll down just a bit here. Now I have all of this for location in Boston. I have these 5 line items, and you can see the commitment is really the old column that existed. Now we have a new column called allocated supply, and the rest of them here are all standard. What is new is supply required date. So this is the date that the customer would like the product. This is new, so it's calculating how many days late. And this is the best date that the system can currently figure out that that product will be shipped on. Now, the allocated, these are drop downs where when I click on it, it will show you that it's actually allocated against a transfer order. And these are also drop down, so drill down. You can see that 12 have been allocated, 5 are late. So just as an example, that's a transfer order allocation. Here's one against a PO where you can drill right into the PO. And you'll see there's a bi-directional allocation here. So when I click on this, you'll see there's a sales order that I'm allocating against. And that is now available on work orders, purchase orders, transfer orders, and containers. Third one, here's an actual shipment. So this would be like an inbound container that I'm allocating against. And then last but not least, a work order, because I'm producing these Doritos. And again, we're 6 days late. And then the simplest of all, right, we actually have 25 matching 25. And why do we have that? Because we have exactly the amount of inventory that we need, and the system is grabbing those. Now, you don't want to be coming into an order and taking a look at every single field here to see what's late. There are, just so you know, if you go to order management, you'll see an alerts screen, and there's an order management dashboard as well, which kind of consolidates, some searches, some links that you may have, everything together. But to point out, these are very simple fields that you can access through a saved search, and you could just make it a reminder. So for example, sales order shipping late. Simple search, conditional highlighting here, orange flag, right? That means I'm 1 day, 5 days, and 5 days. And as I get over 5 days, I'm highlighting it and making a bold. All right, so a simple little thing, what you can do is anytime something is late, you can create a reminder, make a search, and remember that these can generate an email to go out to you and notify you when that happens. So again, instant alerts. Now, to come back to the allocation, sales order number 2 here, I just took an example with a sales channel. So the idea is that maybe the small grocery companies here have a certain allotment. And then what you'll see here when I click on this allocated supply again is that the allocation has gone directly to that. Now, what I'll point out here is the customer actually ordered 31, only received 30. And why is that? Because the allotment for small grocery was limited to 30. So that is doesn't have to be that way, but if you set it up that way, the system will stop the allocation process even though you have inventory, and it will make the rest of the inventory available to other channels or to the general public. All right, so that's the 2 different kind of allocations. One's against the sales channel, one against general orders. It looks the same on a work order and the same on a transfer order. Couple of things they've added, which looks very much like available to promise did, is an earliest item availability screen where you can pick the subsidiary, the item, the sales channel even, the quantity, your allocation strategy, the date, and then the system will figure out your earliest available date over here. So especially if you have multiple locations, just gets you a quick little intro into where that inventory is at. Where can you source the inventory the quickest? And again, it's kind of like a what if as you change the quantities or you change the sales channels here. The system will automatically update these. And you can see here, there's only one reservation and it's against New Jersey. So we talked about those order reservations, they're very simple looking. It's a reservation against an item, a sales channel, a location. These can have an expiry date. So in this case, mine expires in December. And I'm allocating 50. I can see I currently have 23 left over. And then the system at the bottom here is going to consolidate and accumulate all of the reservations. And it's going to show me any shipments I have against that reservation already. So you can see there's one open one here with the sales order that I entered earlier. Lastly, if you don't want to automate the whole process, what you can do is go to the allocate order screen, fill out the filters. What I'll point out here, what's one of the things that I really like a lot is that let's say you're trying to optimize your shipments and your allocation by revenue. And I've tried this out. The system will actually look at the sales order lines and orders with the most revenue and will prioritize those. The same thing if you're looking at gross profit or potentially fulfilling the highest amount of orders and making sure that that happens. So all you would do is hit the submit button, the system runs through it. You can go and make edits if you want to, and you can actually turn this into a schedule. So lastly though, if you want to create some human intervention, there's still the old reallocation screen, but within a sales order now, as I scroll down again, and I make this a little bit smaller, you'll actually see over to the right here, there is a reallocate option where the system will automatically generate a recommendation. So what you would do is you go to that item, you hit a recommendation here. It will show you affected orders that have been affected through the potential reallocation. And then all you would do is accept this. So think of it, you have a customer calling you, yelling at you, want inventory, you go to an existing order that you know, you take a look at potentially a recommendation, you let the system come up with it, you accept it, and at this point in time, the system comes back and reallocates that for you. And you can see now the inventory is being committed, right? So it's moved from somebody else and I borrowed it from them. All right, that was my topic, supply allocation. Definitely the quick version of it. What I'll do is I'll pass this over to Husssain and let him walk you through the material requirements planning and leave you with that.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. You guys can hear me okay?
I can
Great.
hear you, yeah.
We
Okay,
got you,
cool.
Husssain.
Very cool. And Mike, if you want to stop sharing.
Yeah, give me a second here. Okay, there you go.
Okay, wonderful. So I know we have been sitting here for quite some time. It has been a long session. I'm glad you guys are still sticking around. I see, you know, some 57 attendees here. So I'll be brief. We're going to cover material requirement planning as part of this presentation. So this actually goes over demand planning, supply planning, and some of the enhancements that NetSuite has done in past year or so, where we have introduced a material requirements planning that takes care mostly of the supply planning, a portion of it. So there's still demand planning that you can employ, but as you would see as part of the presentation, there's a lot of things you could do with the new functionality. We're going to look at the planning workbench that could be used by a buyer or a purchaser, and it comes with alerts, exceptions, demand and supply, meaning where is the demand coming from and what's the supply to fulfill that demand. We're also going to look at the timeline views that are available as part of the planning workbench, and then how it all comes together as part of the supply allocation engine, which partly Michael went over. So before material requirements planning was introduced, a lot of people, if you guys are using demand and supply plans within NetSuite, or you have used them in the past, you are familiar with, you know, historical transactions and sales forecast that you can bring in to create your demand plan that feeds into supply plan, and supply plan is then used to generate purchase orders or manufacturing work orders. This is also part of, you know, a lot of the standard talk tracks within NetSuite presentations. So keep in mind, demand plan is still available and you can use it. So you have, you know, the different calculation methods for your demand plan, and you also have your reorder points and the replenishment triggers within the item records. So that's all still there. You know, you can go and view those as part of the item 360 dashboard or directly from the menu options. Now, what has changed is that apart from the demand plan, we now have a material requirements planning, and we also have a planning workbench. So where the MRP has the whole engine that has been built and that supports, you know, your inventory, your sales orders, transfer orders, work orders, POs, and inbound containers. And then the planning workbench would then allow you to go and generate plan orders, POs, transfer orders, work orders. A lot of the material requirements planning setup is part of this new addition. So there's item setup and some of the preferences. I'm going to go through some of the item setup so you are aware of that functionality. Now, also keep in mind that material requirements planning is not required and it's not dependent on the demand plan. You can certainly use this functionality without the demand planning module. So if you don't have demand planning, you can still, you know, take advantage of material requirements planning. Okay, and everything, you know, after material requirements planning, including the planning workbench, you know, comes with the solution. You can use it. In terms of the MRP and demand planning steps, so, you know, you would start with defining your replenishment method, whether it's reorder point, time phase, or it coming in from the MRP engine and calculation. Once you have that set up, you can then figure out what your demand sources are going to be, whether it's a forecast, it's coming from your demand planning calculation methods, or a CSV import, or is coming from your order expected ship date, or some sort of a forecast. Once you have the demand sources, you can establish how you're gonna, supply for those demands. So you can establish the planning parameters, lead time, safety stocks, lot sizing, consumption days, reschedule window, and time fence. And after that, you can run through your MRP planning. And I'm going to actually show you how NetSuite MRP goes through the refresh. And then we have these supply definitions that you can set up, and then view the results and take actions accordingly. So you have a supply definition, which kind of brings it all together. The supply definition then also has a way to show you your exceptions, your actions, plus your supply and demand. So what I'm going to do now is let me jump into NetSuite. And actually, I'm going to come back to Planning Workbench. I'm going to start with a supply definition here. So supply definition, you can actually come to list supply plan, actually transactions, supply planning, and supply plan definitions, and that will lead you to this window. And this is where I have my scope set up. And hold on. Are you guys able to see my screen?
We got you.
Somehow it's stuck. Hold on. Let's see if I can go there. Okay, I'll go from here. Somehow those windows are stuck, and I'm not sure why. But what I was showing you guys was that you have a scope, you have a horizon. There's some item groups, item categories, and item groups that you can set up as part of the planning rules. And what it boils down to is how or what rules you have in place to generate the supply. Okay. So you have your go ahead.
View results.
Yes, I'm going to go there.
Okay, sorry. Just help me.
Yeah. Let me close these out. Okay, so we have item categories, item groups, and this is where you can set up the items and the rules. This is how you can set up what actions to take, in this case, creating a transfer order if needed from a New Jersey location, actually sourcing from the New York location to New Jersey location. Now, where it all comes back is if I come back to my definitions and I come to view results. So we have a planning workbench now. The planning workbench would show you all the orders that are part of this planning workbench. So, or all the items. In this case, I have the different beverages. So if I look at, actually, I can also show you the scope of locations that were defined by that definition. So New York, Boston, New Jersey, and then I have these items. So if I look at Pepsi, for example, I have a couple of, in this case, exceptions, 4 in supply and 6 in demand. Before I actually go there, let me also show you that you have filters up at the top where you have exceptions, actions, supply, and demand. And I wanted to actually highlight that as well. So let me go here and just talk about it a little bit before I go back into the planning workbench. So for action types, you have here different actions that are available to you that the MRP is suggesting for you, the different exceptions that are available, as part of the MRP. And then where is the supply going to come from? So inbound shipments or on-hand quantities or available quantities, a transfer order, a work order. And then the demand types, where you have the actual demand, forecast demand. Again, the plan transfer order, work order, safety stock, a supply change order, transfer order, or a work order. So those are firmed versus planned. So coming back to my planning workbench, if I come to my items, the important thing here is this timeline. So if I come here, and actually let's go to monthly first. So we can see that we have on the left-hand side, sales order, transfer orders, total demand. That is on the 1st of March 25th, then 120, 100, and 30, and then it tapers off. And that kind of also goes into the production requirements. However, the available balance, which is calculated by the MRP, is starting with 250, 225, 105.5, and then going into June, it goes to negative. And so it's telling me that come June, we are not going to have enough supply to feed the demand. And if I want to go, more detail into my weekly view, then I can see maybe in a little bit more the close time range, what's happening. And this is happening about, so, by the end of May, we are okay, but coming into May 29th and then on from June 5th, we're pretty much going in negative. Okay, so given that, if I go back to, for example, we're looking at Pepsi, right? So if I look at my exceptions, so it's pretty much telling me the same information that I had available on the timeline view. It just is giving me, in more of a discrete steps, that item availability. There is no availability within my planning horizon for my New York and New Jersey locations. And then if I want to go look at my supply, it's telling me that what I have available on hand, okay, from New York and from Boston, and what are my planned purchase orders. Again, both of these are for Boston. And I can actually scroll to the right and I can see the actual quantities and the units of measure. Now, if I go look at my demand, then I have all these sales order that are, making up the demand. And so we have to make sure that this demand is being fulfilled. Now, if I come and look at, for example, let's take a look at this. This is pegging, which is, again, very timely and interesting view. It's certainly needed as part of the MRP. So I can see that for the sales order, which is for 100 items, or in this 100 Pepsis, I have on-hand quantity available, that's 55, but I have a shortfall of 45, which is going to be covered by a planned purchase order, right? But this comes in handy if it's part of a manufacturing work order. Then you would actually see which work orders are in the system that could be used to fulfill that demand. And same thing you could pretty much see across the board, the pegging structure for other sales orders. And I'm also going to show you from the supply side, so you can see the difference. In this case, I have a sales order for 25. It's completely, fulfillable through on-hand quantities, so there are no planned POs for this. Now, if I go look at the supply, I can come down here and I can, again, look at it from a planned PO point of view. So if I click on that, it's telling me that this PO has the sales order pegged against it. So the planned PO that system is recommending is for 45 units, and those 45 units are going to go towards the sales order. So if I want to take those steps, I can come here and I can select these planned POs and I can create a purchase order, or I can also mark them as firmed. Okay, Michael, feel free to make comments or if you want to elaborate on any of this. Okay. So we talked about demand, we talked about supply, we talked about exception. Now, Ted, let's take a look at a couple of items that have some actions next to them. So we're gonna, in this case, let's take a look at Sprite item right here. So again, let's look at the timeline first. Let's go to weekly. So we have available balance going fairly okay. And in this case, it just goes down a bit in March, but otherwise it's okay. And then if I go look at the action, it's just saying confirming a proposed purchase order. And if you want to go look at that purchase order and see what that purchase order might be for, so this was 19101. If I go to this purchase order and look at its pegging hierarchy, so this is there for maybe fulfilling sales order 1813, okay, which is total for 15 items. Three could come from this PO. Let's take a look at one more. See whichever one we can be this. Again, same type of deal here. And again, it tells me that this is coming from the safety stock. Again, safety stock is something that you, once you use it, you have to replenish. So that's why it's here. And if I look at the second one, this is coming from a work order, a planned work order. And that planned work order then has a sales order pegged underneath it. So you have a sales order that satisfies the work order, or that's used, work order is used to satisfy the sales order, and then work order needs items that are coming in from the purchase order. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, show you guys the planning workbench that's available for you to use. One thing I'm going to leave with you is, as part of the NetSuite supply planning, I would say the backbone, they have built out this MRP engine, and this MRP engine has to be refreshed. In that case, what you have to come and do, and you can schedule this, and I'm going to open it in a new tab. So this is where you can set up your MRP data to be refreshed, either a complete refresh or a net change or incremental refresh. And depending on which items have been configured for the MRP, you can set those options. And also the supply plan definitions, which I was showing you earlier, we were using the demo supply chain definition. So you can pick and choose if you want specific data for specific supply chain definition to be refreshed and not everything, okay? And you can also provide a date range, or what's going to be your planning horizon, how far along you want to go to update your MRP and view the results. So this is part of the MRP planning that NetSuite has built to bring you this planning workbench and the supply planning definitions and the planning rules that come along with it.
Husssain, if our users are not seeing the supply planning workbench in their portal, is it a module? How do they get access to it? And as far as pricing, I think that's something that needs to be discussed with your account manager, NetSuite rep, right?
Right. So I have Michael answer those questions. Michael, you can answer them. The setup enable feature that's required to make sure MRP is available. Is Michael on mute, or?
He is on mute.
Okay. Otherwise, I'll go and show them.
Yeah, I probably may have stepped away for a minute.
That's fine. So there are a couple of features that needs to be enabled, and then the MRP functionality is available for you guys. Let me take you and show you where that is.
Looks like we're freezing up again.
Hold on. I can change the freezing on my end. Can you guys see it now?
Yep, now it works.
Okay, cool. So
this is in setup and then
the setup and then company and then enable features. There are a few things that are that needs to be enabled there. And then once they are enabled, then you are going to see, first of all, the supply planning menu option, and then the rest of the, the rest of the menu, sub-menu options that go along with it. Okay. Let me see if I can. So supply allocation, sales channel allocation that Michael went over. Demand planning, if you have demand planning module, this option would be available and you can turn on or off. But most importantly, material requirements planning. You would need to turn this on to make those supply planning and planning workbench available for you. There is parts of material planning which I didn't go over, which is multi-location planning. So that allows you to, feed your demand from multiple locations, and then in the background can create transfer orders as needed, or even fulfillment, across multiple locations or from multiple locations, where the same order could be then split across locations based on which location has the proper quantity available. Okay.
Excellent.